your daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome on in, everyone, to another edition of the Locked On Eagles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team each and every day. My name is Gino Camilleri, the host of the Locked On Eagles podcast, which always, of course, is your first listen each and every day, bringing you today's show, this Tuesday edition of the show, where we usually get into stock up, stock down. We will be taking stock of the Eagles sitting at 6-7, as well as looking at the other teams sitting at 6-7 in the NFC, where the Eagles stand in regards to the playoff picture. And finally, with this big COVID outbreak in the NFL, just exactly how will it affect the Philadelphia Eagles when they play the Washington football team on Sunday? So getting started, stock up, stock down. We're not taking stock in any players. We're not giving stock up, stock down awards. We are talking about simply where the Eagles stand at 6-7. Is this a task that this team can overcome to get to the playoffs? You may be asking yourself, 6-7 through week 14, with all of these teams around the NFC sitting at 6-7 after the Eagles had a bad loss to the Giants a couple weeks ago. Just how can they get it done? Just how can they get to the playoffs? Well, I tell you, do not worry. Do not worry, because the Philadelphia Eagles have been here before. They've been at 6-7 twice in the past two times that they have made the playoffs, in 2018 and 2019. Through 14 weeks, I can't even make this up, the Philadelphia Eagles were 6-7, where they would go on to win 7 of those 8 games down the stretch in those 2 seasons. They would go on to make the playoffs in both of those seasons. They would have a chance to beat New Orleans in 2018. And if Carson Wentz didn't get hurt in 2019, they stood a chance to beat the Seattle Seahawks. So 6-7, you're thinking, hey, you don't have a winning record. You're going against your division. I'm not too concerned about the record at all. It's taking what is in front of you and controlling your own destiny. With 4 games in the division, 2 against Washington, who is one of the other 4 teams in the NFC that sits at 6-7, you have to make sure that you get the tiebreak over Washington. How do you do that? You go at least 1-1 against them, and you hopefully outscore them. You hope that the common opponent tiebreaker goes through, or you put it in your own hands. You beat them twice. You win one against the Giants, and then you test your luck against Dallas in week 17. See how you can do. But if they only win 2 of these games, it's going to be a difficult task to get here. Looking back to 2018 and 2019, they almost didn't make it in both of those seasons unless they went on those stretches. And they won 7 out of the 8 of those games. The only game they lost was in overtime. They had a chance. They were in it. They were in a 1-score game, and they could have won. So the Eagles going down the stretch, including the Super Bowl run the year before, where they also had to win 4 games in a row to bring home a championship, at 6-7, without the coaching staff that was here before, a lot of these players have been in this position. Fletcher Cox, Rodney McLeod, Derek Barnett, Javon Hargrave wasn't there for the first run, but he's going to be there now. And you look at the other positions, your offensive line. Lane Johnson was there. Jason Kelce was there. Oh, now you have an upgrade with Jordan Mailata, an upgrade with Landon Dickerson. You're getting this combination of guys who have gone through the ringer, gone through the gauntlet of having to win a stretch of games where you're not playing the easiest opponents. Washington, outside of that bad game last week against Dallas, has beaten some good teams. You're going to have to beat a good Washington football team, not just once, but twice in order to get to the playoffs. But don't worry, they're 6-7, and they have a chance. That's all you need in the NFL. You need a chip in a chair. I always think back to that 2008 season. They were in a very similar predicament. They had that bad tie with Cincinnati Bengals that year, and then they go down the stretch, win out all those games. Everything goes right for them, and they end up as a 6th seed in the NFC Championship. The Philadelphia Eagles have a chance to get into that 7th seed. They have a chance to go into a playoff game in a year where not many people even thought they would come close to this position. There were many media pundits outside of Philadelphia who had them picking the top 5 of the 2022 draft because they believed that they were going to be that poor of a team. I don't think us here at the Locked On Eagles podcast ever believed that. We thought that they would be right around what Las Vegas had put them at 6.5 wins prior to the season. Right now they're at 6. They have 4 games to go. Can they get to 8? Could they get to 9? And basically, if they won out and got to 10 wins, they would be securing their own destiny with a chance to get into the playoffs and go on the road and take on one of the tougher teams in the NFC when it comes to the Cardinals, Green Bay, Tampa Bay. It would be tough, but you're going to have to get through some tough playoff-type atmosphere games to even get to that point. When we come back, we're talking about teams that are 6 and 7. There's 4 other ones that are 6 and 7, one above the Eagles, that's 7 and 6. 2 teams at 5 and 7. This wild card playoff is wide open, but we're going to take a look at where the Eagles stands in regards to the rest of the teams in the NFC with similar records in the wild card. But before we do that, we have a message from our friends over at Boost Mobile. You listen to podcasts for the power of knowledge. You switch to Boost Mobile for the power of saving money. I know you guys have seen the commercials by now. Going way back, somebody like me who was always watching football on Sundays, you'd hear the Where You At commercials. Boost Mobile, man, they got you. Boost Mobile is the best free 5G phone that you will get free. Did you hear that? A free 5G phone. You could watch all TV. You could watch your latest episodes of your favorite shows, watch sports, get 3 lines of unlimited data for $30 a month per line. So anybody in your family, your friend group can get America's largest 5G network where you could get all the 5G speed, especially for the playoffs. It's going to be the holiday time. There's going to be some football on during the holidays. You're going to want to have a 5G phone that can make sure that you're watching all the good games here. So make sure you switch to Boost Mobile and you get a free Samsung Galaxy A32 5G when you switch to one of America's largest 5G networks. More power to save. Boost Mobile. Disclaimer, free phone limited to new customers and 1 per line. Additional restrictions apply. Offers and coverage not available everywhere for all phones and networks. See boostmobile.com for details. This show is also brought to you by our friends over at On Location. Super Bowl 56 at SoFi is less than 100 days away, and On Location, the official hospitality partner of the NFL, is the only place for you to score a once-in-a-lifetime Super Bowl ticket and experience package of your choosing. Select your exact seats and choose from elite experiences featuring an exclusive pregame celebration with NFL legends, a 5-star hotel in LA, and food by the great Wolfgang Puck. I mention it all the time. I have all of Wolfgang Puck's pans upstairs. It's knives. Love the guy. And his food is great. I want to get out there, and I'm using On Location when I want to get out there. So you can use On Location, exp.com/SB56 for more information, or search Super Bowl On Location. That's On Location, exp.com/SB56, or search Super Bowl On Location. Welcome on back, everybody, here to this Tuesday edition of the show. Gino Camilleri joining you on this Locked On Eagles. Stock up, stock down? Not really. We're not talking about that today. We are taking stock in where the Eagles stand in regards to the other teams in the NFC playoffs. In segment 1, we look back at the 2 seasons, 2018 and 2019, where the Eagles were 6 and 7. There weren't as many teams sitting around at 6 and 7 as there are this go around. You just take a look at the NFL standings right now. You take a look at the NFC standings. The top 5 is basically all said and done. Number 6 is San Francisco at 7 and 6. They have the tiebreaker over you. They beat you. Washington is currently the 7th seed at 6 and 7. Minnesota, the 8th seed at 6 and 7. They own the tiebreaker over percentage in common games against the Eagles. Then at the 9th seed right now is the Philadelphia Eagles at 6 and 7. Atlanta Falcons in 10th at 6 and 7. New Orleans at 6 and 7. Both of those teams, Atlanta and New Orleans, you would own the tiebreaker over because you had beat them. Sitting just behind them at 5 and 8 are Carolina and Seattle. The only team that's eliminated from the NFC playoffs right now is the Detroit Lions, who the Philadelphia Eagles also have a common tiebreaker above, but they don't over the Giants because they lost to the Giants, and they're going to have to beat them coming down the stretch. So you're looking at this jumble of all of these guys, all of these teams that are sitting there hungry to get that 6th and 7th wild card spot. You see, every week, especially this week on Sunday when us Eagles fans didn't have to stress, we were watching games. Cincinnati had a chance to take down San Francisco, which would have put 6 teams at 6 and 7, which would have made it even messier. So San Fran kind of has separated themselves as that 6th seed currently. The Eagles have to make sure they wrap up this 7th seed if they want to get to the playoffs. Football Outsiders has a breakdown of the percentage and the chance of them to clinch any of the seeds, every single team. The Philadelphia Eagles, sitting at 6 and 7, have a total percent chance to make the playoffs at 36.6, which is tied currently with Minnesota, who's the only other 6 and 7 team to have anywhere as near as good as odds to make the playoffs as the Eagles do. You look at Washington, they have a 17.1% chance. I said Minnesota at a 36.6. New Orleans has a 22.7. Atlanta has a 2% chance. San Fran has an 85.4% chance, as you can see, because they had won that game. So you're looking at those teams around that are 6 and 7. One of them's in your division. You have the odds. For once, the Eagles aren't the underdog in this situation, even though they are. Even though they're not in a situation that is meant for them to succeed in. 4 games down the stretch against divisional opponents is not going to be an easy task. Well, you've already dropped 2 of those games. You got blown out against Dallas, and it was an ugly offensive performance against the Giants. Nick Sirianni's looked good down the stretch here, but I don't think Jeffrey Lurie and Howie Roseman and Nick Sirianni are going to want to have a discussion about being 1-5 in the division. If they could walk away at 3-3, 500 in the division, you stand a chance, because that means you would go 3-1 down the stretch in these 4 games, get you to 3-3 in your division, and take advantage of that 36.6% chance, as well as the 27.1% chance you have to be the 7th seed, which is greater than those other 4 teams sitting at 6 and 7. The Eagles have everything in front of them, everything to play for. Everything they want is in their hands. Say what you want about the beginning of the season. Say what you want about that ugly Giants game a couple of weeks ago. They have had 2 weeks to rest. 2 weeks to get guys like Jason Kelce, like Fletcher Cox, fully healthy. These guys that have been on the injury report most of the season with these nagging injuries. They got 2 weeks off to now go into a division game against Washington, who put on a putrid performance in a game that Mike McCarthy said he was going to go to Washington and win, and he did just that. And he did it in a fashion that really took its toll on Washington. They're out guys like Chase Young already. They might potentially be out Jonathan Allen again. They were banged up in that game already, and they'd suffered more injuries. And the COVID report is one thing that is affecting everybody around the National Football League. And when we come back, that's exactly what we are going to talk about. Now that we know where we are in terms of this conference, in terms of the NFC playoffs, will this COVID outbreak really make things difficult for some teams here in the NFC playoffs, make it more difficult for some teams maybe than others? But for once, the Eagles are on the good side of the injury bug, and we will be talking about that to finish up this Tuesday edition of the show. But before we do that, we have a message from our friends over at Stance. Let me tell you about Stance. It's Christmas time, and if you're going to work and you're still wearing a tan or a black sock this time of year, you're not doing yourself any justice. You got to show out with some Stance socks. They're unbelievably comfortable, unbelievably colorful as well. It's super soft, entirely unique, fun to wear. Show it off at any party that you go to. Founded in 2009, Stance represents a radical reinnovation in the socks, underwear, and active apparel industry. They focus on 3 things: comfort, quality, and creativity. And they bring an atypical design to the sock game. Like I said, if you're just wearing a white, tan, or black sock at this point in time, come on. Expand outside your horizons. If you want something like a Star Wars sock like me, I'm a Star Wars nerd. If you like Christmas movies, if you like The Office, Harry Potter, not the biggest Harry Potter fan, but I know J.K. Rowling has a bunch of you sucked in. So make sure you go check out their Harry Potter socks over at stance.com. It's one of their great websites that you could go get some socks. And make sure you use that promo code LOCKEDON. They're unbelievably soft, unbelievably comfortable. You can use MLB, NBA, NFL, and man, let me tell you, I have them on right now. Don't even have to turn my heater on that I usually have going during the show. Make sure you check out Stance using that promo code LOCKEDON to get 15% off your first order. All right, everybody, welcome on back. This is the Locked On Eagles podcast. Today is Tuesday, and we are taking stock. Now moving into the injury portion of the show, one I don't like to talk about. It's not so much injuries now that the Eagles are coming off a bye, but the COVID bug, that yesterday on Monday affected 36 people in the NFL. Today, an additional 25. If I have that number correct, they're near 60 cases in the National Football League. The Eagles are bit by that bug as well. Running back Jason Huntley and bigger name wide receiver Quez Watkins were both put on the COVID injury report. What does that mean for the Philadelphia Eagles? Well, it means that your number 2 receiver is out for this game against Washington unless he can get those 2 positive tests that would allow him to play. But looking at Jalen Reagor, looking at J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, Greg Ward, it really looks like it's going to be the Devontae Smith show going into this game. The Eagles haven't been affected as bad as some team, the Browns. It just seemed like they had a completely terrible outbreak in their facility. If you look at the NBA, the Chicago Bulls have 10 of their guys that were on the active roster prior to this outbreak now on COVID reserve. So it's not just a thing that's affecting the NFL. It affected right in Philadelphia, the Philadelphia Union in the playoffs, where most of their starting 11 was out for that conference game. We're in a time now where you have to overcome that. So what did the Eagles do to hopefully put a little leeway in the Quez Watkins idea? They protected John Hightower today. So we might see a little bit of invigoration in terms of speed coming into this lineup with John Hightower. Maybe he can come into fielding some kicks. Maybe he could be a guy that is a field stretcher with Quez Watkins out. But as we move closer, we're going to keep an eye on just how bad this thing is going to be because it has affected Washington. It's affecting the Eagles. If this thing continues to get bigger, we might be in a situation where some guys have to take that next man up mentality and really run with it. The Eagles are in a situation where they cannot lose to the Washington football team. They have to come out playing good football. They have to be intense, follow that hits principle, and they can win that game on Sunday. But that'll do it for me, Gino Camilleri, here on this edition of the Locked On Eagles podcast. We took stock in just exactly how the Eagles are looking at 6-7 as compared to those other teams in the NFC wildcard race, looking at Minnesota, looking at Washington, looking at the tiebreaker over Atlanta and New Orleans. The Eagles have their fate in their hands, and we took a look at the injury bug, where the Eagles sit in terms of COVID. We hope everybody around the NFL and all respective sports is able to get back healthy and be in the game because everybody loves watching football. Everybody loves coming here every day, 5 days a week to listen to us here on the Locked On Eagles podcast. We appreciate everybody tuning in 5 days a week. Some people who showed us their Spotify wrapped up had a crazy amount of shows that we listened to. So we really thank you from the bottom of our hearts here on the Locked On Eagles podcast. This holiday season, we hope everybody stays healthy, stay safe. We hope you're sitting at home in the car listening to us here on the Locked On Eagles podcast on Odyssey, Stitcher, Spotify, SoundCloud, anywhere where you can get your podcast for free. Also on YouTube, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel so we can get more views on everything. Make sure we grow our audience because we have the best fans here on the Locked On Eagles podcast and the Locked On Podcast Network, where you are our first listen each and every day. And for your second listen, make sure you go check out Locked On Bets with your boy Q, who's giving you the winners each and every week. The man is on a streak, and that'll do it for us here on the Locked On Eagles podcast. I'm Gino Camilleri. Thank you for downloading. Thank you for listening, and fly, Eagles, fly.